It was 7 a.m., and still you were asleep. Samantha's voice tore through the hush like a razor, sharp and piercing. I squinted against the morning light, feeling disoriented, my back throbbing from another restless night. Before I could even sit up, she was at the foot of my bed, arms crossed, a look of pure disdain on her face. "Get up! Aaron's hungry. We're out of bacon. The kitchen is a disaster. What in the world do you do all day?" I took a slow, deep breath, reminding myself not to get into a fight today. Not again. "I'm not feeling well this morning," I said softly, reaching for my dressing gown. "I stayed up late, doing the laundry you both left behind." Samantha didn't even acknowledge my words. She came closer. "You're just lazy," she hissed. "Aaron works all day, and you can't even make breakfast in your own home. It's no surprise nobody ever comes to see you." And then she did it. She struck me, not hard enough to knock me down, but hard enough to silence the room. Her hand hung in the air for a moment, as if she too was stunned by her own actions. I sat there, as motionless as a statue, one hand pressed to my cheek. The pain wasn't physical. It was the betrayal, the audacity, the way she looked at me as if I were nothing. This was my home, my bed, my floors. And she hit me here? The room seemed to hum, a low, vacant buzz. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't ask why. I simply turned my face toward her and spoke in a low, level tone. "You just made a big mistake." She scoffed, spun around, and stormed out of the room. I didn't follow. I sat perfectly still, letting the warmth fade from my skin and her words settle like dust in the air. By the time the front door slammed behind her, I was no longer trembling. I was thinking. They had said it would be just for a weekend. Aaron had called me with that boyish charm he still used when he wanted something. "Just a couple of days, Mom. Samantha's job situation changed and our lease is up. We'll be out of your hair before you know it." Since then, I'd come to understand what it's like to have silence forced upon you. I gave them my bedroom, the master suite, and moved into the guest room without a single complaint. I prepared every meal, kept the fridge filled, and even folded their laundry when it sat in the basket for too long. I told myself I was being generous, supportive, that family was supposed to help one another. But Samantha didn't want support. She wanted control. It started with small things. My beloved teapot was replaced with her own, a loud one that shrieked like a banshee. My favorite wooden spoon was accidentally thrown out. My cherished coffee blend was swapped for some expensive, trendy concoction that tasted like burnt sugar. I used to savor my mornings, reading quietly at the kitchen table with a soft jazz record playing. Now every morning began with orders and the sharp tapping of her acrylic nails on the granite countertop. Just last week, I found my recipe box pushed to the back of the pantry, hidden behind a stack of protein powders. My collection of classic novels was packed away in a box. No one asked. No one explained. And Aaron? He barely noticed. Or perhaps he did and simply chose not to care. When I brought up the missing books, he offered a weak smile and said, "Sam thought the living room was a bit cluttered." Cluttered. That word struck me harder than I expected. As if my entire life, my style, my very presence was a mess. I longed to ask him, "Do you see what she's doing? Do you even see me anymore?" But I held my tongue once more. This morning altered everything, because now I couldn't unsee it. What she was doing, what he was allowing. I went to the kitchen and opened the drawer where I kept my checkbook. It was gone. There was a time when Aaron wouldn't go to sleep without my hand in his. He used to hold my fingers so tightly, as if the world would fall apart the second I let go. That was after the accident, when he was just 8 and still waking up at night calling for his father. But his father wasn't coming back. A drunk driver had made sure of that on a rainy stretch of the I-40. I buried my sorrow in work. 3 jobs, one at the hospital during the day, a diner shift at night, and weekends doing private care for a woman with Alzheimer's who called me dear and sometimes Eleanor. I took every shift because Aaron needed shoes, books, and insurance,
because we had a mortgage, because I couldn't let him see how exhausted I was. He never saw me weep, not once. I skipped every vacation, never bought a new car, and prepared every meal from scratch because it was more affordable than takeout. I even sold my engagement ring to cover one of his high school trips to Washington, D.C. When he got into college, I cried in the car after dropping him off, not just from pride, but from the immense relief that I had somehow gotten him that far. The house was paid off early, every brick purchased with hours I could never get back, but I did it happily, willingly. And now he walked through my home as if he owned it, as if I was lucky to be in his presence. He didn't ask how I was doing. He didn't notice when my hands trembled as I carried the laundry. He'd tell me things like, "Samantha means well," and laugh when she made fun of my music, my clothes, and the way I cooked. She was slowly eroding my existence one insult at a time, and he let her. No, he even defended her. When I confronted him about the missing checkbook, he brushed it off. "Sam probably just moved it. Don't worry, Mom, we're family." I nodded. But inside something was shattering because I didn't think he remembered who had bled to give him this life. The envelope was cream-colored and unremarkable. It had been shoved halfway into the mailbox addressed to Aaron, but what caught my attention was the red stamp in the corner. Mortgage refinance inquiry. Urgent response required. Aaron hadn't mentioned refinancing, and I certainly hadn't requested it. I placed the envelope on the kitchen table and stared at it for a long minute. Samantha was out at her yoga class, she had said. Aaron was still at work. The house was silent, and for the first time in days I could think clearly. I picked it up and walked across the street to Helen's house. Helen and I used to trade zucchini from our gardens back when our backs were stronger and our days were slower. She was a retired notary, now sharper than ever. Her eyes narrowed as she read the envelope. "You didn't sign anything?" she asked. "Nothing," I said. We sat in her kitchen while she pulled up the Durham County records on her tablet. I watched the lines on her face harden with each tap of her finger. "Oh, Lillian," she breathed. "What is it?" She submitted a change of address. She listed herself as the main contact for the mortgage. And this, Helen turned the screen toward me, this is a preliminary intent to refinance under both their names. "But the deed is only in my name," I said. Helen nodded. "It still is, but they're trying to move fast. If the bank processes this, they could try to legally pull you in or, even worse, drain equity you didn't authorize." I felt the heat rise to my ears. My chest tightened, not with fear, but with something else. Determination. They were playing a game they didn't understand. I had been too quiet, too accommodating for too long, but now they were forging documents, trying to turn my home into a bargaining chip. I looked at Helen. "Can you help me get copies of everything?" She nodded. As I walked back across the street, the envelope still in my hand, I realized something had changed. I wasn't the one being erased anymore. I was the one holding the evidence. I poured Samantha her coffee exactly the way she liked it, black, with a splash of almond milk and no sugar. She didn't say thank you. She was too preoccupied with her phone, probably writing one of her snarky little posts about boomer energy and deadweight relatives. I slowly stirred my own cup, watching the steam rise, allowing the silence to settle between us like dust. She believed she had won. She thought her forged signatures and fake addresses had given her the advantage, but I knew something she didn't. I had never added Aaron to the deed. When I had paid off this house 12 years ago, the title remained in my name, with me as the sole owner and no co-borrower. I had intended to update it when Aaron got married, but something held me back. Perhaps a flash of intuition, perhaps just exhaustion. Now That decision was saving me. That night, while they were out at some friend's engagement party, one of those events Samantha dressed for like it was a red carpet event, I sat at the kitchen table with every file folder I owned. I made copies of everything: deed history, utility bills, tax records, every document with my name and mine alone. Then I called my attorney, Deborah. She had been my lawyer for years, helping me navigate the hospital's pension system after I retired. I told her everything. I asked for one thing: an expedited, notarized affidavit confirming sole ownership based on county records and deed history. "You want to take this to court?" she asked. "Not yet," I said, "but I want to be prepared." The next morning, I made banana oat muffins. Samantha hated them, claiming they were too earthy, but Aaron liked them, and old habits die hard. I set the table as if nothing were wrong, because I had no intention of tipping them off. Not yet. I wanted them to believe I was still crumbling under the pressure. I wanted them to remain comfortable. By the end of the week, Deborah delivered the papers to me in person. I placed them in a manila envelope, sealed it, and slid it into the drawer where my checkbook used to be. They had taken my space. Now I was taking it back. Samantha was already mid-rant when the knock came. "These eggs are like rubber," she said, poking her plate with exaggerated disgust. "Honestly, how do you manage to mess up something so basic?" Aaron sat next to her, half asleep and scrolling through his phone. He didn't even glance up. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and walked toward the front door, feeling completely calm. When I opened it, a deputy stood tall, hat in hand. He gave me a polite nod. "Lillian Whitmore?" "Yes," I said. "I'm here to serve an eviction notice. Court authorized, signed, and filed. They have 72 hours to vacate the premises." I stepped aside and let him in. He walked into the dining room, unfolded the papers, and placed them squarely on the table between the orange juice and the butter dish. Samantha looked up, first confused, then horrified. "What is this?" she demanded. The deputy didn't flinch. "By order of the court, you are required to vacate this residence within 72 hours. She grabbed the paper, her eyes scanning it wildly, and then she whipped her gaze toward me. "What the hell is this? You're kicking us out?" Aaron was standing now, panic rising behind his groggy eyes. "Mom, what's happening?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I walked over, picked up the butter knife, and nudged the eviction notice an inch closer to her plate. Then I turned back to the sink and began rinsing the coffee mugs. Samantha's voice shrieked behind me. "You can't do this! We have rights!" The deputy remained steady. "You have 72 hours to remove your belongings. After that, enforcement becomes mandatory." Aaron took a step toward me. "Mom, why didn't you talk to me about this?" I still said nothing. What was there left to say? They had talked over me for weeks, months even. Samantha had slapped me in my own home and called me worthless. Aaron had stood by, his eyes averted. I dried my hands and reached for the last clean mug. The silence around the table began to settle, heavy and suffocating. And for the first time in 3 weeks, I finally heard myself think. By noon the next day, I knew something had changed because my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. I hadn't posted anything, and I hadn't told a soul besides Helen and Deborah, but someone had. Samantha. She took a picture of their packed suitcases on the front lawn and wrote a caption dripping with feigned sorrow. "Imagine your own mother-in-law evicting you over breakfast. We're officially homeless. I guess love isn't enough." It didn't take long for her legion of followers to react. Hundreds of comments flooded in, calling me heartless, cruel, and selfish. One person even suggested I belonged in a nursing home, not this house. I didn't cry. I didn't even get mad. I just scrolled in silence, taking deep breaths as I watched strangers form opinions based on a half sentence and an over-filtered selfie. But by sunset, something strange happened. The tide began to turn. A woman named Trina, someone I didn't know, commented with a screenshot from Durham County's public records website. "The deed is only in her name. That's not eviction. That's protection." Then came another. "Wait, this address was listed in a refinance inquiry 2 weeks ago. Fraud." And then the hammer dropped. Someone traced Aaron's name to his employer. He worked in procurement for a regional development firm. A public comment appeared on their page. "Is this the same Aaron Whitmore who filed home improvement receipts under your business expense account?" My hand went still. Within hours, Aaron's LinkedIn page vanished. Then his Facebook. Then Samantha's apology, thin, poorly worded, and clearly coerced, appeared. It read, "We're going through a hard time. Please respect our privacy. There's more to the story." But the damage was done. Aaron didn't come home that night. The house was quiet. Samantha was gone too. Not a word, not a trace. Later that evening, Deborah called. "Did you see what surfaced?" "I did," I said, setting my phone down on the table next to my tea. The comments had done what I couldn't. They had pulled back the curtain. For once, I didn't need to fight. I just needed to let the truth speak louder than their noise. The phone call came just after lunch while I was trimming the herb pots on the back patio. "Is this Mrs. Lillian Whitmore?" a crisp voice asked. "Yes," I said, setting down my shears. "This is Sharon from First State Mortgage Services. I'm calling to follow up on the report you filed last week regarding suspected fraudulent activity on a refinance application." My pulse didn't quicken. I had been anticipating this. "We've concluded our internal review. You were right to flag it. Not only was your signature forged, but several supporting documents listed incorrect income statements and a fake authorization letter. Was the account active? Yes, but it's been accumulating late fees. Payment stopped completely last week." I stared out at the garden, letting that information sink in. Aaron hadn't just lied. He had built a lie on a foundation of sand, and now the tide was coming in. "We'll be freezing the application. Your deed remains solely in your name, ma'am. I've updated the record accordingly." Ma'am. After weeks of being talked over, insulted, and even slapped in my own kitchen, that word settled over my shoulders like a soft blanket. The next day, Aaron showed up. He looked exhausted. Not the kind of tired from work, but the kind that comes from watching everything he built on falsehoods begin to crumble. "Mom, I wanted to talk." I didn't answer. I let him fill the silence. "I messed up. We messed up. Sam got carried away with the refinance thing. I should have stopped her. I should have told you. Can we just start over?" I held his gaze. He looked like the boy I had once raised, but smaller now, shrinking under the weight of his consequences. "I did reconsider, Aaron," I said, my voice steady. "That's why you're not here anymore." He flinched. I didn't gloat. I didn't raise my voice. I simply closed the door. Then I turned the lock, and for the first time in a long time, I left it that way. The silence was no longer heavy. It was soft now. like a breath, like a breeze through the curtains. For the first time in months, the house didn't feel like it was holding its breath. It exhaled. I planted mint first, then basil, and a little lavender near the edge. The soil was arid but receptive. I pressed it down gently, giving each root space, water, and patience, the way I wished someone had done for me. The herbs caught the sunlight through the kitchen window, where Samantha had once thrown open cabinets as if she owned them. Now, the same space smelled of earth, fresh greens, and lemon soap. I didn't speak to Aaron after that last knock. No messages came, no letters. Whatever lesson he had learned, it hadn't included an apology, and I had stopped waiting for one. 2 days after I planted the basil, Helen knocked. She held a pie in one hand and a takeout tray of coffee in the other. "No offense," she said, "but you've looked like hell lately. Figured you might need something warm." I smiled. No offense taken. We sat at the small table by the window, the same table where Samantha had once tossed her purse and where Aaron had scrolled through his phone instead of looking up. Now it held 2 mismatched mugs, an unevenly sliced pie, and a silence that didn't sting. Helen talked about her granddaughter's soccer game. I told her about the lavender and how I wasn't sure if it would survive the fall. We didn't talk about court papers or eviction notices. We didn't need to. There was peace in that ordinary moment. Something sacred about folding napkins and pouring coffee without tension. As the sun lowered outside, catching the edge of the pie tin, I realized something. I hadn't raised my voice in weeks. I hadn't cried into my pillow. I hadn't been asked to apologize for simply existing in my own home. The house was quiet now, and for the first time, the quiet didn't hurt. I stood, refilled Helen's coffee, and glanced at the herbs lining the sill. They were small but growing, and I knew in some quiet, steady way, so was I. It's been nearly a year. The hallway still creaks near the 3rd floorboard, and the kitchen faucet still hisses when you turn it too quickly. Some things didn't need to be changed. Others did. The locks were the first thing. A quiet man named Joel came the week after the final hearing. He didn't ask questions. He just removed the old hardware and replaced it with a firm click. As he left, he handed me a single silver key. "It's all yours now, ma'am." I remember turning that key in the front door that evening, the weight of it resting between my fingers like a signature on a blank page. That click, that one sound, felt louder than all the arguments that had ever echoed in this house. Since then, the walls have learned to breathe differently. No more muffled yelling behind closed doors, no more slamming drawers or sideways insults wrapped in fake smiles. Just space, light, and silence with room to stretch. I walk through it now, coffee in hand, bare feet across hardwood floors. My name is on the mailbox, the mortgage, and the deed. Not because someone gave it to me, but because I reclaimed it, document by document, step by step. People sometimes ask, usually with the same worried tilt of the head, "Don't you get lonely?" And I always respond the same way. Not anymore. Lonely is sitting across from people who pretend you're invisible. Lonely is preparing 3 meals a day for those who only speak to criticize the seasoning. This is peace. I framed the new deed last week, not to show it off. No one sees this space unless I invite them, but because I wanted a reminder in bold ink. It reads, Lillian Whitmore, sole owner. I hold it now, tracing my name. Not bitter, not bruised, just quiet and whole. No more wondering if I'm allowed to wake up late, cook what I like, or close my door without a raised eyebrow. This house never needed more voices. It just needed its own.